Bears head coach Matt Eberflus had an interesting way of explaining why he had to call a timeout after a touchdown to go for two. Eberflus blamed a lack of communication, and it cost the Bears dearly, as they could have used that timeout at the end of the game. Any football observer knew the need to go for two in that situation to get the Bears within a field goal, and you'd think the head coach would have communicated that to the offense before they even got the ball. Clearly, he and his offense are not on the same page. Also not on the same page, Mayor Brandon Johnson and his embattled public school CEO, Pedro Martinez. Last week, the mayor asked Martinez to resign, and he refused. This week, he wrote a defiant op-ed explaining why. Quote, "I have chosen not to resign because doing so would risk creating a leadership vacuum and instability that could disrupt the strategic progress we've made to date." Martinez notes how destructive it would be to lose a CEO in the middle of a contentious contract negotiation with the powerful Chicago Teachers Union, in which they claim his offer of 4 to 5% raises isn't nearly enough. He also mentions that if he left, the system would be on its 8th CEO in 10 years, and that's a severe level of instability for a system that is cratering money and students. Sound familiar? The Bears have had 4 head coaches in that same time span, another shocking case of instability. Now, Johnson made the ask of Martinez when Martinez has a clause in his contract that requires 6 months' notice before termination, as well as 5 months severance. So you'd think the mayor would figure Martinez would refuse to forego all of that by simply stepping down. Much like Eberflus should have known his team would have no choice but to go for two. And if this is really about a mayor simply exercising his right to choose his own school CEO, then why didn't he do it a year ago, when he could have had avoided a public and embarrassing feud and have a new leader in place for contract negotiations with the powerful union? If Bears general manager Ryan Poles knew the development of his star rookie quarterback was the team's top priority, why did he leave him hung out to dry with a porous offensive line? Chicagoans right now are scratching their heads both about their favorite football team and their city government. In one case, the fumbles are causing disappointment among fans and fantasy owners. In the other case, the fumbles are causing lasting financial and institutional damage to a system that is essential to the future health of the city. If the Bears can't turn it around, Eberflus is sure to be gone after this year, and then Poles is left one more chance to achieve Bears fans' Super Bowl dreams. Martinez, however, is likely to be gone at the end of the year regardless, as a brand new elected school board comes in. If the mayor doesn't call a timeout and get right with his schools chief, the city's public school students might not get another chance at achieving their dreams. And that's our opening shot.
Coming up on Paris on Politics.
Tonight, who does the Chicago Board of Education back? CEO Pedro Martinez or Mayor Brandon Johnson? The latest presidential polling, what does it say and can we trust it? And former Governor Pat Quinn and his effort to get property tax relief for Illinois residents. Paris on Politics is next.
This is Paris on Politics from Fox 32 Chicago.
Welcome to Paris on Politics, where we go behind the headlines and beyond the spin. All eyes on Chicago Public Schools as the battle between Mayor Johnson and the CPS CEO he wants gone came to a head. Pedro Martinez defiantly told the public he will not step down. This evening, supporters and opponents of the embattled schools chief showed out to a dramatic public school board hearing, one that could have ramifications for years to come. After a lively several-hour meeting, embattled CPS CEO Pedro Martinez keeps his job for now. The board did not address his employment status or short-term borrowing sought by the mayor and Chicago Teachers Union to partially pay for a new contract. Martinez opened by correcting what he says is misinformation spread by CTU that he wants to close schools.
To put this issue to rest once and for all, I'm asking the board to adopt a resolution today clearly stating that CPS will not close or consolidate any schools before the fully elected school board is in place in January 2027.
More than 100 public commenters signed up to speak. 30 were chosen through a random lottery, along with public officials and union representatives.
If you could exert a fraction of the energy and chutzpah you've exercised to defend your job, to champion our students and demand full funding, we'd be well on our way to closing this projected deficit.
Under Pedro Martinez's leadership, CPS created a plan to specifically address the history of racial inequity that Black children face. That is, in this uncertain times, is enough to say keep Pedro Martinez and work with him. CTU may talk a good game, but we are concerned about their hidden agendas,
Speaker 14, please
mismanagement,
conclude your
lies,
remarks.
manipulations, and they're putting politics over our kids.
Martinez, who makes $360,000 a year, would need 6 months' notice for termination, plus 5 months severance. School board members did not offer comment on what happens next. Martinez is set to go before City Council's Finance Committee next week.
My concern is with the conditions of the classroom and his inability to pick up the phone and work with us to go to Springfield to make sure that we got the funding that our kids need and deserve it.
You know, the point that was made was that the mayor went down to Springfield, and according to the governor, he didn't bring up funding for CPS. There were some other priorities he brought up.
Well, I think that is the job of the CEO. And I think that the mayor has asked him to work with us so that we can go to ask for the governor the $1.1 billion that the state owes the Chicago Public School District. This is based on the formula that the state even decided. I think that the children in Wilmette deserve the same education as the Chicago Public Schools.
What do you think happens now? Again, the board's not going to take action. Will the mayor back down on his request that he resign, or do you think the pressure amps up?
I do think that what we hear today from parents, from teachers, from educators, there's a vote of no confidence by teachers. Parents in our community demand changes so that we have transportation for children with disabilities, that we have fully staffed schools, and we have a CEO with no solutions. We need to make sure that him as a CFO from 2003 to 2009 use this kind of financial instruments to make sure that we do not let kids without proper staffing. My question is, what is he doing now?
At the same time, CTU wants, and the mayor wants, a high-interest loan, the same kind of financial instrument, no?
Well, he did it in 2003 and 2009. That's my question to the CEO. If he's not willing to do that, then we have to talk to the governor so that we get the $1.1 billion that the state owes. But when he does not offer any solution by, as we can see from parents, by closing schools, I do think that we have a big problem.
So the board's not taking action tonight on Martinez's employment status. You happy about that?
Yeah, I am. I think it sends a signal that there's stability that's going to continue to move forward until the next board meeting. I hope that we can get behind this and really start doing the business for the parents, teachers, and students that attend CPS.
What happens next? Do you think the mayor ramps up the pressure, CTU ramps up the pressure, or will they back off?
Well, here, listen, we're in the middle of negotiations, so they should continue the negotiations. As a matter of fact, to even make sure that there's no appearance of a conflict of interest, we should get an independent arbitrator. So that way CTU and CPS can negotiate and not have the mayor putting his thumb on the scale. We need to make sure that we're taking a look as to what exactly, what can we afford from the teachers? What is it that the state and the federal government need to help us with? Listen, I want to go to Springfield. I've been to Springfield. Matter of fact, I was in Springfield. And when I talked to leadership and folks down in Springfield about what the city's ask was, it wasn't about more money for CPS. It was about making sure they killed the hybrid bill and also making sure that they killed House Bill 303.
And earlier this week, we caught up with powerful Chicago Teachers Union President Stacey Davis Gates, who is demanding a bigger contract from Martinez and more money from Governor Pritzker. She was less than happy to see us.
No, I want the Chicago Public Schools. I want the Chicago Board of Education. I want the CEO of the Chicago Public Schools. I want the Mayor of Chicago. I want the Governor of Illinois to fully fund the Chicago Public Schools so that children in every single zip code and every single neighborhood can have what they deserve. Right now, in our school system, we have over 1,200 vacancies, teacher vacancies. These are vacancies that provide valuable opportunity and learning for our young people that are on field. Additionally, we have probably 300 plus vacancies of teacher assistants. What does that mean? It means that now you have kindergarten classrooms that have over 30 young people in there. Could you imagine teaching 5-year-olds with 30 plus varying abilities, their first time maybe in a classroom setting, and you are the only grown-up in that room? So you have that. You also have school communities that have newcomers who have survived a very traumatic journey from Venezuela to our country, who do not have housing, who also do not have bilingual support in their schools, because many of them are in schools, black schools, that have already been robbed of a full curriculum, of classes that look like honor and AP courses. So they're in a place that's already been robbed, and now they're being robbed of more too. So those are the things that I want to ameliorate it.
The board, can I just ask you, the board
Yes.
though approved the budget with the notion that they were going to come back to take up another vote once there was a contract to find a way to balance whatever new spending there would be. So is your beef with the board as well?
No, and I don't think you heard the word beef, and I don't think you see me beefing. And what I will say is that what happens with the offering that CEO Martinez made of a 5% raise with the budget that they have is that the following year, we will have 5,000 layoffs. The following year, there will be furlough days. Everything that our CEO is doing with respect to this contract negotiation and how closely connected it is to a budget is ridiculous. Because what he's telling us and what we're not hearing, or maybe we're hearing and we don't care, I'm not sure, but what's happening is that he's telling Chicago that the Chicago public schools cannot operate. He has a closings list, right? He is saying that he can't pay for the people who work in CPS to work in CPS. Give me just a second though, right? You came to see me, so.
You're right.
Yep, exactly. So that the people who work for CPS can't afford to be paid. He's also codifying those 1,200 teacher vacancies. So how do you have school when 80% of your schools don't have a library or a librarian? What I'm saying to you right now is that as a CEO, he can't just say, I can't afford your contract. He has to say, this is how we're going to afford school in the city of Chicago, the third largest city in this country, the economic engine of the Midwest, a place that is educating more bilingual students, but not getting that from the state in return in funding. That's a problem.
Coming up on Paris on Politics.
What the latest presidential polling numbers say, and are they reliable?
The viewer in the morning really needs to have a good feeling for what it's going to be like for the rest of the day.
I've got 3 kids myself, so I set out their clothes Monday through Friday, which you can do too based on our 7-day forecast. The last thing that you want to have to think about is, what is my kid going to be wearing to school? What do I need in the morning?
Having grown up here, having spent about 30 years in this market predicting the weather,
you not only get really familiar with the weather, but with the needs of your audience. And that's what it means to be the Weather Authority.
October baseball is different. It's history, making it, breaking it, rewriting it. It's ice in your veins, tested by 60 feet of heat. It's a faithful silence and a deafening roar. It's putting your money to work, giving your city what to earn, and the wild card, playing for keeps. Yeah, October's different.
By now, you've seen a presidential poll. Or weekend, you've probably seen 2 or 3 a week. Most of the national polls show Vice President Kamala Harris with a slight lead on Donald Trump. But journalists know we've been burned on relying too much on polling in the past. So what goes into polling now, and are those polls reliable? Joining us is Clifford Young, president of polling for the polling research group Ipsos. Clifford Young, originally from Chicago. Thanks for being back here.
Originally from here. It's great to be here.
Okay, so let's take a look at the latest aggregate polling. It has Harris up 48.5 to 47 over Donald Trump. As you look at sort of the trend over time, what should voters make of this?
Well, you know, the election's changed completely with her entry, right? The Democratic base is much more energized, much more enthused, and it changed the game. It's a new game right now. And what we could say is probably she's ahead by a nose hair, not much more. But without a doubt, it's a different game relative to when Biden was in.
All right, I think, you know, onlookers are so curious as to what goes into this. So tell us how pollsters identify people that then give an accurate snapshot of where the electorate is.
Yeah, well, our sample and its robustness is everything, right? If we get it wrong, we really shoot ourselves in the head. So we focus on a lot of granular details. So we start with the census. The census is conducted by the U.S. government, the federal government, and we go there and we get a demographic profile. What's the percent of, let's say, race, and what's the percent of gender, what's the percent of education? We ensure that our samples are exactly distributed like the census, which is also important. Ultimately, making sure that they're representative of the national population.
And is it just cold calling folks? What kind of questions are you asking them?
We do a little bit of everything. Sometimes we use snail mail, sometimes we knock on the door, sometimes we call. Today, most pollsters are actually doing it online. In the case of Ipsos, we actually go to your door, we knock on your door, we recruit you into our panel, and then we'll interview you multiple times up to the election.
I know in 2016, a lot of folks were surprised at the outcome, given what the polling had said before. Were there changes made since then?
Yeah, we've been really focusing on our craft, on adjusting things. We believe we had a problem kind of capturing that soft Trump voter, that individual that doesn't vote in anything else or for anyone else but Trump. The industry is really focused on that individual, and we think we have that sort of person in our sample today, but we will see.
So they still exist, that soft Trump voter that really doesn't pay attention except to vote for Trump?
Yeah, they're there, and actually we find them all over the world. And so in Brazil, the tropical Trump Bolsonaro, they're soft Bolsonaro voters. We see the same thing in Turkey, same thing in France. So it's a phenomenon that's global, but we have it particularly here in the United States.
All right, let's look at some of the other data that you've collected with Ipsos. Top polling issues: economy, political extremism, immigration. Is this valuable for candidates to sort of tailor their messages?
Yeah, it's essential. The candidate, we know based upon a database of 1,000 elections around the world that the candidate strongest on the main issue wins 85% of the time.
And of course, it's the economy, which is why there's so much
It's inflation. Now, you can frame that in different ways. Donald Trump is talking about the cost of living. Harris tends to be talking about future economic opportunity, but it's all about the economy today.
What makes for a more reliable poll versus a less reliable poll?
Once again, going back to that discussion about the demographic profile, the profile of the census, a poll that skews or deviates a lot from what is normal or average in the population probably is more biased. One that corresponds or aligned much more with what the census says is the national population, is the general population, probably is more robust.
Do you ever worry about folks that say one thing but maybe plan to do another? Like they say, I'll vote for Harris, but in the back of their head, they're like, I kind of think I'm going to pull the lever for Trump when I go in there.
Yeah, we typically don't see flippers from one side to the other. They usually hide in undecideds and don't know. And so a soft Trump voter is someone that hides not with on the other side, but hides in saying, I'm not quite sure today. We're always worried about those individuals because ultimately they can skew the results. And so we have a lot of different methods that kind of get at kind of probing people with different questions to see if they're leaners or not.
How many actual undecideds are there still at this point?
Probably about 5%. That's all on the margin. Some of those won't even vote. And so really the campaigns are looking for 0.25% here, 0.5% there, really focus on the swing states.
All right, let's take a look at another data point that you produced here, the presidential campaign performance on key issues. So you've got Kamala Harris doing well on certain issues, Trump doing better on other issues. What do we take away from this?
Yeah, it's just all about matchups, right? And so the critical question is, who's winning on the main issues today? What we can see is when it comes to inflation, it's Donald Trump. When it comes to threats to democracy, it's Harris. And it's going to be all about that in the campaign. Which one is framed as more important? Which side is able to win out on those key issues?
And I should mention, since 2016, the polling has been very accurate. Is that what you anticipate here in 2024? What we're seeing now, barring some significant changes in the next several weeks, that's what the outcome is likely going to be.
Yeah, I think it's going to be razor thin. I think the polling is showing that today. I think the results will suggest that as well. Whether it's razor thin on the Trump side or the Harris side, we will see.
And razor thin in those swing states, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin. What are you seeing right now in those states?
Well, Wisconsin and Michigan, Harris has a little bit stronger lead. In Pennsylvania, it's razor thin. It leans a bit Harris, but it's going to go up to Election Day to determine who wins that state.
All right, everything you needed to know about polling. It's fascinating because we see these polls all the time, and it's great to get a glimpse at how you do it. So Clifford Young, thanks very much for being here.
It's awesome to be here. Thank you.
You bet.
Coming up on Paris on Politics.
Former Governor Pat Quinn and his effort to get property tax relief on the Illinois ballot.
The social media role of what we do here is really vital.
My favorite platforms to be able to connect to the viewer is really Instagram, Facebook, as well as YouTube. I try daily to post updates. I really think Instagram is helpful. We can send out stories that are up to date.
We have to meet our viewers where they are, across all platforms, across all media.
Using every available tool to get important weather information to you. That's what it means to be the Weather Authority.
Football's newest show breaks down all things NFL, GMFB Overtime. Check out top highlights, player interviews, special guests, and everything in between. It's GMFB Overtime.
Mornings at 11 on Fox Chicago Plus. Discover Chicago's hidden gems and untold tales.
If you look up, odds are you're seeing our work.
Fox 32's photographers share the stories they've captured with you.
Fountain jet shoots up 150 feet. Our designers, the sky is their canvas.
Streaming now at Fox 32 on Fox Local. Download Fox Local on these streaming platforms and start watching.
Voters have a lot to think about when they go to the polls in about 5 weeks. Beyond voting for elected officials, they'll have a couple of questions to answer. One advisory referendum asked voters, quote, should the Illinois Constitution be amended to create an additional 3% tax on income greater than $1 million for the purpose of dedicating funds raised to property tax relief? And joining us to explain this is a familiar face, someone who fought to get this question onto the ballot, former Illinois Governor Pat Quinn. Governor Quinn, always good to see you.
Glad to be here.
Welcome to my new digs here. So when you talk about raising this kind of revenue, of all things to dedicate that money to, you know, the governor wants money for schools or for infrastructure. Why property tax relief?
Well, this is the biggest problem in Illinois. The second highest, our state is second highest in the country in property taxes. The burden gets worse and worse for everyday people who live from paycheck to paycheck. We have over 3 million households in Illinois who pay residential property taxes, and it hasn't been attended to properly. And so this is a referendum for the first time where voters can specify how to fund property tax relief and give everyday people a fighting chance.
Tell us how it would work. Should this referendum pass, how much money would it raise and who would get that relief and how much relief?
We just learned from the Illinois Department of Revenue that if you had a surtax of 3% on millionaires, and Illinois has about 77,000 millionaires. These are people who declare more than $1 million every year in income. If you assess those folks surcharge, it would raise $4.5 billion. That's a lot of money, and that would be the biggest amount of property tax relief in Illinois history. It would help lots and lots of people who are suffering from these very high reassessments, and then the tax bill comes in, and it's very unaffordable for a lot of folks who want to stay in their homes.
All right, so I mean, this is an advisory referendum. If it passes, lawmakers would probably have to work out the specifics then, like what level of income would receive what kind of relief?
Well, basically, politicians follow the election returns. That's why we want people to vote yes on the referendum. It's called the Property Tax Relief Amendment. And if it passes, the key is to get it enacted into our Constitution. If it's in the Constitution, it specifies directly property tax relief. That's a mandate. That's not advising. It's got to happen. It's got to happen for everyday people who need a fighting chance to get their homes improved and so on, and not have a punitive property tax burden. They did this in Massachusetts 2 years ago. They had a binding referendum on a surtax on millionaires. It passed, and they're finding that it's raising more money than they ever expected. And we can do the same thing in Illinois. This follows a principle as old as the Bible. Taxes should be based on ability to pay. Right now, millionaires get tax breaks, and everyday people get tax bills in Illinois, high property tax bills.
Well, as you know, the current governor, Governor Pritzker, wanted a graduated income tax, and he put that question to a referendum, a binding referendum, and it failed. So what makes you think that this might have a different outcome?
Number one, this is different. This is all about property tax relief. It only focuses on millionaires, people who have more than $1 million of income every year. The referendum 4 years ago was much lower on that. I think this is straightforward. It focuses the relief where it's needed the most, property tax relief, and it indicates that there's about 1% of the people of Illinois who declare more than $1 million in income. They're blessed. We're happy to see that. But a surtax on their income is the best way to pay for property tax relief. We can't just talk about it. We've got to do it. And if you take a look at other states around the country, the states that have income taxes, more than half or about half have, 25 I think, have higher taxes on millionaires than Illinois does. So we ought to catch up to them and do the right thing for people who need help the most. This is fairness. Our upside-down current tax code is not fair to everyday people.
And we have to remind our viewers that it's a non-binding referendum. It's an advisory referendum. So that means however voters vote on it, it doesn't mean that it becomes law all of a sudden.
Longest journey begins with the first step. 42 years ago, I was right here, and we put an advisory question on the ballot for the Citizen Utility Board, Illinois' largest consumer group. We had it on the ballot all over the state. People voted for it. Within a few months, the legislature got the message from the voters and passed CUB into law. We can do the same thing with the property tax relief amendment. We've got to get a big vote on November 5th when people go to vote for president, for a big turnout, of course. It'll send a message that Springfield needs to hear.
So you're hoping that if this passes with flying colors, then perhaps the governor and lawmakers will take that as a sign that they need to get active and amend the Constitution. And this is always confusing with referenda, but remind viewers how it passes. It needs to clear a certain threshold.
Yeah, to get a constitutional amendment on the ballot, you need 3/5 of the Illinois House, 3/5 of the Senate to put it on the ballot, and then the people have to vote on it by 60%. I've done that. I put a referendum on the ballot called the Cutback Amendment that reduced the size of the legislature. The people voted for it. It's now in the Constitution. And when I was governor, right after Blagojevich and Ryan, both of them were in jail at the same time when I was governor, I proposed a recall amendment. So people in Illinois will have the opportunity to recall a bad governor. And we put that on the ballot in 2010. It passed overwhelmingly. And we can do the same thing right now with the property tax relief amendment. We have to really organize. Early to bed, early to rise, work like hell and organize for the
So you're getting people out there to
relief.
knock on doors and sign petitions?
That's how you organize.
This is what you've been doing for 40 plus years.
Right. A friend of mine told me I'll be passing petitions when I'm in a nursing home. That's okay with me.
For nursing home president.
Yeah, whatever. But the point is, the referendum is a voice to the people. Oftentimes, the way to get rid of legislative gridlock and slowness is the people have to take charge. In a referendum that we have in Illinois for property tax relief is a way to go.
I got to ask you, you were considering running for mayor in a crowded field here. You ultimately didn't. When you see Mayor Johnson about a year and a half in a lot of turmoil the last several months, as a Chicagoan, as a political observer here, what do you make of it?
Well, it's been disappointing. I know Brandon. I like Brandon as a person, but I think you really have to roll up your sleeves and get along with people. If you want to have a good run as mayor, you got to pass a budget. I did 6 budgets when I was governor. The guy who came after me couldn't do that. And I think it's a very important lesson to the mayor to pay attention to budget issues, to make sure you cut expenses and make sure people get a fair shake when it comes to raising revenue.
All right, Governor Pat Quinn, again, the advisory referendum on a surcharge on millionaires to fund property tax relief. Always good to talk to you.
Same here.
All right. Thanks for spending your time with us. Enjoy your weekend and stay up to date on all the news you need with Fox Chicago on air and online. So long, everyone.